In the previous video, we learned how to add and remove items from the hierarchical structure of a tree view. In this video, we'll continue from where that example left off to learn how to add additional columns to the tree view, which can be used to display information about the tree's items. We'll also learn how to use the bind method to capture the special event that occurs when the user selects an item from the tree view. To add new columns to the tree view, configure the columns property. I'll say treeview.config columns, and you pass the columns property a list of the names of the columns you want to include. So I'm going to just include one additional column called version. And you can see that got added here. It doesn't have a title yet, but you'll see a small divider in the middle between the two columns. To configure the properties of a column, we'll use the column method of the tree view. With the column method, the first parameter is the name of the column we want to modify, and then we can pass in one or more properties to change. So I can change the width of that version column to be 50 pixels, and I'm going to anchor it so that its contents and text are centered using the center anchor. You'll see how that shrunk down that column to now only be 50 pixels wide. In addition to configuring the columns we created, we can also configure the main tree view column with the column method by referring to it with the special name #0. So I'll call treeview.column #0, and I'm going to set the width of my main tree view column to be 150. When I execute that command, the main tree view column is now 150 pixels wide. We can configure the title to be displayed above columns by using the heading method. treeview.heading. We pass in the name of the column that we want to configure, and then we set the text property to the name we want above that column. So I want my version column to say version above it. And you can see that represented on the tree view. To configure the value contained within a slot of that column, use the set method. So treeview.set, the first parameter is the item on the hierarchy to which we're going to be referencing. So I want to reference that Python item in my hierarchy. I'm going to be placing contents into the version column, and the contents I want to place in there will be 3.4.1. It's the name of the Python version we're using. So when I call this, it'll look at the Python item in the tree view under the version column, and it'll place the specified text. We can also add tags to tree view items to modify their properties as groups. This is similar to what we saw with text and we'll learn with the canvas widgets. Tags can be added to an item at the time of creation by including the tags property or later by using the item method. I can add a tag to my Python item by using the item method with the first parameter being Python, referencing the item I'm going to change. And then I'll set the tags property, and I'm going to create a tag in here called software. So the tags property accepts a list of one or more strings for the tags you want to associate with that item. Once tags have been established, you can use those tags to configure items with the tag configure method. You pass in the first parameter, which is the name of the tag you want to configure, and then you can specify one or more properties. So I'm going to change the background of that tag to be yellow so it's highlighted. Again, the value of using tags is that you can have multiple items specified to use the same tag, and so you can configure their property as groups. The last thing I want to cover with the tree view widget is the very important matter of determining which item in the tree view has been selected by the user. The tree view widget does not support a command callback to execute code when an item is selected. Instead, you can listen to virtual events from the tree view. There are 3 virtual events that the tree view will produce for when a selection is made and when the tree view items are opened or closed. We'll cover virtual events in detail in a later video, but for now, I'll just use the bind method to execute a callback when the selection is made. First, I'm going to define a simple callback function here. And as I mentioned, we'll cover the details of how this is done in the later virtual event section. But this callback will simply print out, using the tree view selection method, the current item that's selected from the tree view. Now, to configure the virtual event with the tree view, I'm going to use the bind method, and I'm going to pass in the name of that special tree view selection event that occurs. This is unique to the tree view and needs to be spelled out just as you see here, as a string with 2 open angle brackets and 2 closed angle brackets, spelled treeview select with a capital T and a capital S. And when treeview select occurs, I'm going to execute that callback function that we just described. Now that I've configured that virtual event, if I select an item from my tree view, you'll see it prints out a list showing which item is selected. Whether or not multiple items can be selected depends on the selection mode. By default, the tree view uses the extended select mode, which allows for multiple items to be selected at once. So if I hold Control, I can click and choose multiple items. You see that the list that's returned includes strings for each of those items that were selected. You can modify the select mode by setting the select mode property. treeview.config select mode equals browse. So the browse select mode will allow one item to be selected at a time. If I try to hold Control and click and select multiple items, it won't let me. Another useful select mode is the select mode of none. And as the name suggests, that doesn't allow you to select any items from the tree. So if I click, it won't highlight those items to show they're selected. We can programmatically select tree items by using the selection add, selection move, and selection toggle methods. The selection add method will add the specified item to the selected items. So I'll add the Python item to be selected. And you notice that the previously selected item, which was first item, still remains selected. I can programmatically unselect items by using the selection remove method, passing in the name of the item I want to unselect. So I unselected Python there. And finally, I can toggle whether or not an item is selected by using the selection toggle method. Again, you pass in the name of the item you want to select, and it'll toggle that based on the current state of that item. So now my Python item is selected again.